What's up, people? Spider-Man 3. Oh boy. Yeah. A couple days ago, watched that movie again. I actually watched it right after I finished recording the Spider-Man 2 video. And... oof. There's honestly a lot to talk about. So... not much introduction. A little history got to throw out there. I guess everybody already knows this, but I don't know, just is worth mentioning. Sam Raimi originally planned to have two villains, Sandman and Harry Osborn. Those are the only two he had in mind. Completing Harry's arc about getting revenge on Peter for killing his dad, and Sandman, of course, with the ridiculous retcon that I'll get to later. But then, producer Avi Arad and Sony Pictures were screaming at Raimi like, no, you gotta include Venom, please, you gotta put in Venom. And Raimi's like, no, I already have two villains, and I don't even get Venom in the first place. They're screaming, they kept pushing him, and he was like, fine, I'll put Venom in there, you happy now? And honestly, I really get the feeling watching this movie, Raimi was trying. After the movie came out, he would later say that he was extremely disappointed by the way it turned out. He talked about how much he tried, how much pressure was put on him, and it ended up not being the movie that it was supposed to be. And I honestly feel bad for him. You kind of get the feeling he was tired when he was getting 3. He had so much pressure on him. And yeah, it's similar. I compare it to Peter Jackson with the Hobbit movies, where he talked about in behind-the-scenes featurettes how tired he was. The more, as you go through each Hobbit movie, you slowly sensed how tired Peter Jackson was with Middle-earth, and he just wanted to get it over with already. And you can't help but feel bad for the guy. So, yeah, that's Raimi with Spider-Man 3. He was so... And, yeah, when I finished this movie, even I remember feeling tired. It was like, oh, man, there was so much. There was so much. So yeah. With all that history out of the way that I feel like everybody already knows, let's get into this. So to first preface this, I don't hate this movie. Actually, when I rewatched it, I found myself disliking it a lot more than I used to, but I wouldn't say it's 100% trash. So, just want to preface that. But yeah, it is bad though. I think it's bad. So, first let's talk about Peter Parker himself. Unlike the last movie where he had a trashy life and ended up giving up the suit, here his life is pretty darn good. He's smiling a lot. He's got the girl. He's going to her plays. He still has a rocky relationship with Harry since now he knows he's Spider-Man. But other than that, it's going fine. He gets the ring and he wants to propose to MJ. But then after that, that build-up is alright, but then because of the amount of crap that was crammed into this, it ended up getting really messy. So I'm trying to think. So he ends up fighting Harry, knocks him out, then he fights Sandman, loses him, and then he finds out Sandman killed his uncle. Oh my. Okay, I'm gonna rant a little bit, but I actually really hate this retcon that apparently Sandman was the one that killed Uncle Ben. If you've seen my Rise of Skywalker video, you know how much I hated the retcons that movie made, and this is basically the same anger I felt with this. It's like, the idea in the first movie was that Peter let that random crook go because he wanted revenge on that guy who didn't give him the money he wanted. And and he was punished by having that random crook kill his uncle. Oh, so now you're suggesting that apparently that guy didn't kill his uncle? It was somebody else? Like, that he never even met? Like, and then that moment in 2 where he confesses to May, that moment doesn't work now, because, like, the guy he was chasing, he wasn't even the one who killed Ben. It was somebody else. So, like I remember, like, when I rewatched these first 2 movies with 3 in mind, they're not as powerful as the first time I watched them. Because now I know the other guy's still out there. Like, honestly, the first hour of this movie wasn't bad, but I was like, oh, okay. But then around the 1 hour mark, they reveal, he's the guy who killed Ben. I think that's the moment where the movie lost me. It's like the first hour, I'm like, okay, I'm on board. It's messy, but I'm on board. But then they reveal, Sandman killed Ben, and the movie immediately lost me. From there to the end of the movie, I was getting more and more angry. So yeah. So yeah. And then Peter and then that symbiote that randomly crashed comes in and latches on to Peter. He gets the black suit on. He kills Sandman. Then there's the whole emo Peter thing, which, rewatching this, I honestly forgot how little screen time emo Peter got. Like, a lot of people remember emo Peter, and I thought he would have like 10 to 20 minutes of screen time, but honestly, his screen time was a lot lesser than I thought. You see him in that montage, doing that really cringy dance, and he gets Eddie Brock fired, and honestly, that dance down the sidewalk, yeah, a lot of people have mocked that moment. Even Spider-Verse mocked it. And for some reason, it was only this viewing that I was like, oh my gosh, that really is cringy. And then well, actually, before he hits MJ, he has that really weird dance. The first time I watched that scene, my jaw was like on the ground. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Like, I was told apparently that scene was supposed to make you laugh, and I'm just like, huh? What? That's the thing I don't get. You're supposed to laugh at emo Peter? Like, aren't you supposed to think this is awful and want him to get the symbiote off? Why are you supposed to laugh at him? I've never got that. Like, it's so strange to me. Like, I thought the symbiote was bad, but now I'm being told, oh, you're supposed to think this is hilarious. Like, what? And then he hits MJ, and he's suddenly on the church, doing that pose that's in the posters. And I'm just thinking, well, that was it? We're already here? Like, wow. That felt rushed when he got there. Finally, he takes the black suit off, and then he goes to fight the villains. And he does have that touching moment with Sandman at the end. No, I say touching, but then I remember they put in the retcon again. Apparently, Ben's death wasn't even intentional. Ben's death was an accident. Do I need to say more? Ben's death was an accident this whole time. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, Peter does forgive him, which I thought was a little nice, but that came after it was revealed Ben's death wasn't even on purpose, and now it just makes me even more mad. So, yeah. Holy crap. Yeah, not much else for Peter. And then other supporting characters before I get to the villains. MJ, like, the relationship between Peter and MJ, like was cool. You know, MJ's a little bland, but it's like, oh, I bought their relationship in the first movie. I even bought it in the second movie. By the time we get to the third, I was expecting them to like fawn over, you know, kissing a lot more. I expected them to be happier together, but then they still have moments where they're fighting verbally. And at this point, I just got sick of it. It's like, oh my, can you get together already? Hey, I don't know, I just got really annoyed. I don't know, like, again, I just got really annoyed how they weren't together in the end. And, like, the whole trilogy had been building up to this. Like, how are you guys not together? I especially hate that moment where where Harry manipulates MJ. Well, Harry tells MJ to break up with Peter. I still don't understand why MJ doesn't scream, hey, Peter, Harry's got his memory back, kick his butt! Like, and then, like, it's so dumb to me. And then MJ gets captured again for the third act. It's like, this isn't familiar at all. I will give credit, though. There's that moment where MJ grabs that brick and drops it on Venom. That's probably the one moment in the entire trilogy where she actually helps. Where she actually helps Peter. It's like, that's probably the one moment in the whole trilogy. Like, that's kind of funny, but, oh, okay. So, yeah, there's that. Not much else supporting. Oh, I honestly forgot about Gwen Stacy. Like, Gwen Stacy is one of the few characters where every time she shows up, I would think, oh yeah, you're in this movie. Which I guess is now a good time. Like, actually, no, I'll mention that later. So, you know, in this one, she's played by Bryce Dallas Howard. Honestly, there's not much to say about Gwen Stacy. Like, she's a lot better in the Mark Webb movies. Actually, no, there's not much to say about her. She's just kind of another girlfriend for Peter to be with. And let's talk about... Oh, and J.K. Simmons is still pretty sweet as J. Jonah Jameson. I don't know if he has less screen time in this or in the first. But yeah, he has that funny moment where he's eating the pills, and yeah. Oh, and one more thing, and before the villains, the Stan Lee cameo also. Like, I didn't mention the Stan Lee cameos in the other two because they were both really short and kind of blink and you'll miss them. But in this one, he actually has like a scene. It's a short scene, but he has a scene with Peter, you know, where he goes, you know, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said. Ah, man, that just made me miss him even more, you know? Like, every time I see him in the MCU movies, I always miss him, but this moment is there too. Definitely the best Stan Lee cameo in the whole trilogy. I think we can all agree on that. Now let's move on to the villains. So let's start with Harry. He definitely was built up over the trilogy to put on the Green Goblin costume and fight Peter. And I know everybody's always said it, but the credits say his name is New Goblin, like, which is so lame. And then he has that fight with Harry. No, he has that fight with Peter. The CGI looked good in some places, but in most of the fight, it did look really iffy and rushed. And this came out in 2007. That same year, we had Pirates of the Caribbean 3, you know, with Davy Jones. Like, how is it the CGI looks off? Then Harry gets knocked out and has amnesia. Which, yeah, now's a good time to mention how the really forced way this movie, like, because there's so much, there's too many villains, they have to take one of the villains out so they can switch it to another villain. So Harry gets amnesia, which was one of the dumbest plot points I've ever... one of the laziest plot points ever, I think. Then Sandman gets more screen time, then he gets taken out. And then Harry conveniently gets his memory back, and he wants to get revenge on Peter. For some reason, he wants to get with MJ again, and I was just thinking, why are we doing this again? Didn't we finish that plot line from the first movie? Why are we back here with him trying to get to MJ? And then what else? Oh, and then he has that fight with Peter in the mansion, which I thought was pretty sweet. You know, there's no CG except for when the glider is flying around. You know, there's choreography. And then he ends up becoming Two-Face. And then the butler tells him what happened with his dad. Like, yeah, I know everybody's already said it, but why didn't that guy tell Harry that what happened to his dad years ago? Like, heck, I watched the editor's cut once, which is like 2 minutes shorter. Apparently, in that cut of the movie, that whole scene with the butler telling Harry what actually happened is not there, implying that in that version, Harry went to help Peter, even though he still believed he killed his dad. Which, I'll admit, that made him showing up feel a lot more awesome. It's like, you may have killed my dad, but I forgive you. I'm still gonna go save you. It's like, I wish that's what happened. I wish that was a deleted scene from the get-go. Oh. But no, we instead have that ridiculous scene where people go, why didn't you tell him years ago? Then he shows up to save Peter, and from here on out, I think he's handled really well. I found myself screaming yes when he helped Peter, and then he ends up getting impaled, which I think that was a really good end for his story. He saves Peter, and yeah, so I think Harry is handled well, mostly in the end. Like, before that, he has an amnesia, and he's pretty dumb, but his end, I think, is handled the best. Then we get Flip Marko. Like, he's played by, well, first of all, I haven't read the comics or anything, but I knew what Sandman looked like. So when I watched this movie, man, Thomas Hayden Church was really good casting. It's like he looks like Sandman and flying off the pages. Like, it's amazing how well they cast him. And they even got the right shirt. It's like, yep, there it is. He's Sandman. Although it is, yeah, that weird convenient spot where he ends up getting his powers was weird. Like, they really couldn't figure out any other way for him to get his powers. And then there's also that scene where we see him rise, and yeah, that scene is really good. You know, there's no dialogue. You see him form and grab the locket with his daughter, which is still odd that it's there, but it's his daughter that gets him to get back up. Like, that scene where he's with his daughter and his wife, or ex-wife, I think. I don't remember, but I liked that scene, and it's like, oh, he's doing all to save his daughter. Like, that's something Raimi does really well. He's kind of similar to Thanos, where he's the hero in his own story, but then of course it's revealed how he's the one that killed Ben. It's like, I liked him, but it's his connection. But the way they force his connection to Spider-Man is where I find myself not liking him. So he fights Spider-Man for a bit, and then he gets washed out. And then the moment he comes back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot you were in this movie. Like, it's amazing how characters will come in, pop out, and then they'll come back in, and my mind just completely forgot about them. And I'll be like, oh yeah, you're in this movie. And then he just becomes a bland villain where he just kind of fights Spider-Man in the end, working with Venom. Though he does have that forgiveness scene with Peter. And he doesn't... Is he the only... I think he's the only villain in this whole trilogy that doesn't die. So that's kind of cool. And now people are theorizing he could come back in No Way Home. I hope he does. Like, I think he's, like, yeah, it would be cool to see him come back in No Way Home. And then the third one, of course, being Venom. I mean, I definitely prefer Tom Hardy in the Venom movie. I haven't seen Let There Be Carnage yet, but yeah, this one played by Topher Grace. Like, everybody's already said Topher Grace was horribly miscast. Like, it's obvious he was meant to be a evil reflection of Peter, but everybody's like, no, that's not Eddie Brock. And now people are saying that with Tom Hardy's version, like, he's not. This isn't Eddie Brock from the comics. But yeah, he was kind of whatever. He has that scene in the church, and then he gets his powers. Honestly, there's not much else. I didn't really like him. I really didn't like this version of Venom. I mean, his design when he's Venom is decent. I didn't find it that compelling. But yeah, honestly, Venom I probably have the least to say about. He's just kind of there. Not to mention, out of the 5 villains in the whole trilogy, he's the only one who doesn't get any form of redemption. You know, Harry and Otto Octavius both redeemed themselves and sacrificed themselves for the greater good. Flint Marko ended up leaving, and he actually didn't die. You know, Norman Osborn, he did try to kill Peter, but his final words were, "Don't tell Harry." It's like he still has good in him. Venom's the only one who doesn't have any of that. He flat out goes out as the villain, which I'm fine with. Like, not every villain needs to have a redemption arc of some kind. So, like, I'm at least okay with at least one that doesn't have redemption of any sort. But again, I just wasn't a fan of him. These are the least amount of things I have to say about Venom. I mean, at least his story is more faithful to the comics. It's his origin, where the symbiote latched on to Spider-Man, and it went onto Venom. Like, it's more comic accurate than the Tom Hardy version. Again, I haven't read the comics, but I know the general story of Venom, and this is a lot more faithful. So yeah. As for other last minute stuff, you know, the fight scenes are pretty cool. Honestly, rewatching this, I forgot how not bad but not good the CGI is. Like, the CGI is, there are so many spots where I see the CGI and I'm thinking, oh wow, that looks fit. Wow. Like, you would think at this point the CGI would be flawless, since like I would have thought as the trilogy went on the CGI would have gotten better and better, but no, it kind of got worse. Like, there are some points where the CGI looks good, mostly with Sandman, but yeah, I was surprised how not good the CGI was. But yeah, the fight scenes are pretty good. It does continue that whole thing with Peter being beaten down and getting his suit ripped up, making it more satisfying when he ends up getting back up to fight the villains. So at least it keeps that. What are last minute things to mention? Oh, the music. So in this one, apparently it wasn't written by Danny Elfman. It was scored by a guy called Christopher Young. He does a really good Elfman impression. Like, honestly, if you told me that if you didn't tell me Elfman wasn't scoring this movie, I wouldn't have been able to figure that out myself. Like, Young does a really good Elfman impression with his music. Like, so, like, you wouldn't even notice Elfman wasn't there. So, and I guess another thing, again, the plot is really convoluted, because there is, like I mentioned in the beginning, there is so much going on, and you really get the feeling Raimi was trying to get it all in one movie, but but it ended up being a mess. And by the time it's over, I was really tired. Here, it's like, oh man, thank God it's over, because I was able to sleep better that night, because of how tired I was. So at least there's that. Um, so a weird spot to end, but yeah, I just had to figure out a way to figure out whatever. Awkward end, but yeah, Spider-Man 3. Honestly, rewatching it, I didn't even realize how much I hated it, but again, it's not all bad. There are some spots I genuinely like, but yeah, it's not a good movie. Like, honestly, I'm thinking back on everything I just talked about. I'm not even sure I'd say it's bad anymore, because there are, again, like, some of the stuff is handled really well, but there are other stuff that's handled really badly. So, like, the biggest flaw of this movie is definitely Sony trying their best to make it good when they ended up making it not the movie it was supposed to be, not what Raimi wanted it to be. So, yeah, that's the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy done. Really hope Tobey Maguire comes back in No Way Home. Like, I think it would be pretty sweet. So yeah. Next, I will tackle the Mark Webb movies, which those are a whole other can of worms on their own. So, peace!